Not to you, Seal. We got another game with black. Let's begin with e4, e5. Obviously, the move e5. Okay, so queen h5. This is a very, very common move at the beginner level. And I forgot to do a 5-minute game. I'll make sure to do it next. Queen h5 attacks the pawn on e5. You guys all probably know that it's a bad idea. Oh my goodness, 1,000 bits from Anonymous Cheer. Bishop c4 threatens checkmate. How do we defend, ladies and gentlemen, against the scholar's mate? How do we defend against it? Do not play knight f6. That doesn't defend against it. Do not move the queen out. We played g6. I will later explain why not queen e7. Okay, he brings his queen back to f3, and he threatens checkmate again. So we're just going to develop the knight and intercept his queen's control of f7. Now, he cannot take my knight because the knight is defended by... Now, I find this queen to be very annoying, guys. I find this queen to be very annoying. Can we chase this queen away? Can we chase this queen away? I don't want to deal with the possibility of scholar's mate. And guess what? I'm centralizing my knight. But Daniel, aren't you moving the same piece more than once in the opening? Didn't you say that you shouldn't make more than one move in the opening? Now, yes, but remember, every rule that I share has a lot of exceptions. And he has played his queen already 2 times. So I can afford, in turn, to delay my development by a move and get rid of this pesky queen. In an actual classical game, I would have played bishop g7, but I just want to illustrate, okay, he's played queen e3. Whenever there's a knight on d4, royal family fork. Boom. Do we take the rook? No, we do not. We look for a better move. We take the queen. We take the queen. We're going to be up a queen, and not only are we going to be up a queen, his king is going to have to move away from castling, and that's just going to be a total, complete disaster, okay? So basically, this game is already over, but I'm going to talk a little bit about how to convert advantages, assuming he doesn't resign. Assuming he doesn't resign, how to convert advantages, trade versus, okay. Advantages, so we take the queen. Now, here's the important thing, guys. When you are up a queen, and particularly when your opponent's king is out in the open like this, what do you need to do? You have to open up the center, because only by opening up the center, essentially, are you going to make manifest your huge lead in material. So how do we open the center? How do we open the center? Yeah, d5. That's it. We open the center by playing d5. 2 defenders, 2 attackers. We can safely proceed with knight takes d5. Okay? He goes knight f3. Now he attacks our pawn. Can we develop a piece and simultaneously defend the pawn? Can we develop a piece and simultaneously defend the pawn? Yeah, we can. What is this called? This is called fianchettoing. This is called fianchetto. I'm going to put this in the chat. Fianchetto is an Italian word that literally means to develop a bishop to the long diagonal. He's got knight c3. Okay, so let's just take the knight. And another very important piece of advice. When you're up material, you still want to develop. Charlie actually had this weakness for a very long time. He would win a queen, and then he would forget to develop, and he'd still get checkmated. He's gone d4, so he does our bidding for us. Whenever there is a capture, and I will talk more about this after the game, you have to take stock of what has changed. Have there been any files that have opened up as a result of this trade, guys? And can we occupy those files with anything? Yes, sure we can. We can go rook e8, x-raying the king. Notice how not only am I up a queen, but I'm opening up the center, and I'm developing my pieces now to very active squares. Now we're just going to take the knight, and this is an instructive moment. Do you guys see the pin? Do you see that because of the pin, this bishop is immobile, it cannot move? So is there any pieces or pawns that we can take because the bishop is essentially a ghost? Yes, sir. Shoop Commander, good job. Sandeep, we can take this pawn. Now, a lot of people look at this, whoa, we're blundering a bishop. No, we're not. I told you to count attackers and defenders. This is not a defender, okay? It's immobile. So only the rook is defending the pawn, but the queen is another attacker. So if the rook takes, we would have taken the queen. Now, can we take on e3? No, we cannot. So I have a question for you guys. Can we move a queen away in order to keep the bishop protected, but to unpin our own bishop? Where can we move the queen? And there's 2 squares. Yep, queen f6. We move the queen away, simultaneously defend the bishop, and now we are ready to take his bishop with ours, keep trading pieces, and then we're going to attack that pawn with our queen. That's how we're going to checkmate him. Okay, so he's taken. We can obviously take. He cannot take our queen because of the pin. Now we're up a queen and a rook. He's gone rook e1. Very important in such positions. Involve all of your pieces. I'm asking myself, are there any pieces that are not doing anything? There's a rook. Let's bring that rook into the game. We don't have to move our queen away now. Very important. If he moves his king away, when we have a piece that is untouchable due to a pin, and he moves his king away from that pin, that's a situation in which we have to be very careful. I'm just going to sacrifice my rook for the bishop because I'm up so, and I'm going to talk about that after the game. And I'm going to do 5 minutes from now on, okay? Because I'm sensitive to the fact that this is a little bit too frantic. Queen takes f3. Now I'm just vacuuming up all of his pawns. And this is a great time to cement the advice I shared for you, which is that when you're up this much material, you don't need to hunt this pawn. You can just go straight for the checkmate. And as you guys are pointing out, we just bring the rook in. Remember, if the pawn were on g7, we would not do that because rook e8 would be checkmate. Okay, he's gone rook e2. I'm going to give him a check on d1, and I'm going to checkmate him on h1. We could have also taken the rook and the bishop and then just promoted the c pawn, but this is a little bit faster. Earlier, you had queen b2 check to sack the exchange to win the rook on b1. Yeah, so when you're completely winning like this and he resigns, when you're completely winning like this, there's multiple ways to accomplish things. I'm trying to choose the method that is most instructive, okay? So take everything with a grain of salt. Okay, so one moment, guys, please. So, bishop c4 was played by white. Now, a lot of people in this position, and Hikaru famously has played queen h5 even in classical games. It's not such a bad move, but obviously it's not good. I will do 5 minutes, guys. Okay, so Charlie also had another weakness, which is that when he would make moves, he would forget that these moves would block the development of other pieces. So queen e7 is inaccurate. What does it block? It blocks the development of the bishop. Blocks the development of the bishop. Now, let's say that we did play queen e7, but we still wanted to develop this bishop. Can somebody tell me how we could still develop the bishop? And could somebody tell me the word I have introduced which describes this particular development? Beautiful. You guys are sharp. Fianchetto, g6. That also simultaneously attacks the queen. Then we would fianchetto the bishop. But another reason I don't like this move is that after knight c3, white could do something very similar to what we did, which is attack our queen and centralize the knight. Why are we allowing this? There's no need to allow it. We go g6. Queen f3, knight f6. Obviously cannot take the knight because the queen is defending that particular square. Okay, so he goes d3, knight c4. So Kodak says, why don't we play queen f6? Because doesn't that not block the development of the bishop? Well, yeah. First of all, it makes the queen vulnerable. Second of all, it blocks the natural development of the knight to f6. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so he goes d3, knight d4. Where should he have gone with the queen? The only move would have been queen d1. And after queen d1, I would have fianchettoed my bishop. And how would you proceed if you were white? How can you chase this knight away from d4? Is there a way to chase this knight from d4? And this is an important move to figure out. c3 is correct. You could also play knight f3, but after knight takes f3, again the queen would have come out. And now the queen has made 3 moves. That's a little bit on the extreme side. So I would go c3 here and then just continue developing. Black has great development. I'm fine. But why so is white? Okay. So he went queen e3, knight takes c2, knight takes e3. And now I play d5. So I hope it makes sense to everybody that when you're up, let's say a queen or a rook, you want to open up the center because only in that way is the full power of the queen going to be displayed. Now, is it a bad idea here to develop your pieces? Absolutely not. It's totally fine also to complete your development. You could also prepare the move d5. How could we prepare the move d5 with a pawn? Okay, and that would also be a very sensible concept, right? To play d5 so that we can recapture on d5 with a pawn and keep our center controlled by pawns. But we don't need to do that. That's not necessary. Okay, knight f3, fianchettoing and simultaneously developing, knight c3. Now I want to talk about the concept of trading. And I'm going to introduce the general advice here, and then I'm going to kind of keep talking about it through the lens of the following games. This is an age-old problem which a lot of people are very confused by. Do you trade when you are up material? Do you trade? And if so, how much do you trade? When do you trade? Now here's what I'm going to say, and nobody's going to like this answer. It depends. you cannot say with any degree of certainty whether you trade when you're up material. I would say it's 50-50. There are cases when you want to trade. There are cases when you don't want to trade. There are cases when you can trade or not trade, and it's equally as good. So let me explain. I'm going to give you guys a sample position. And in the sample position, I'm going to explain the rationale behind both of those options, and I'm going to show you guys why both can be possible and why it can be hard to decide. Okay, I'll help you guys understand in which cases you trade, in which cases you don't trade. So let me set up for you guys a sample position, a very simple sample position. Just give me a second, please. Nicola with 1,000 bits. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Nicola. Okay, so let me give you guys a good example here. Okay. Go. And trust me, this example is going to be really, really simple. Okay, really simple. It's just that I'm trying to illustrate the concept, so I know people might roll their eyes at this. Okay. Whoa, Codex with 5 gifted. Holy, stop it, guys. Crazy support today. I really appreciate it, Codex. I'm so happy. And Lenzer with 500 bits. Of course, this is going on YouTube. I'm so happy people are enjoying this. This is just the beginning. And of course, I'm running out of gas here, so I'll have more energy in subsequent speedruns. But I'm trying my best here, and I appreciate that people are so kind, generous, as always. Okay. Please give me a moment, guys. Please give me one moment here. Okay. So I'm so happy that this format is working. Now let me paste the position in to show you guys what I mean by it depends. Okay. So set up position, and then we're going to return to the game very briefly and continue. FEN, and here we go. Okay. Flip the board, and it's white's play. So we have this position in front of us. White is going forward. And we have a decision to make. What is this decision? And I'm not talking McDonald's or Burger King. What's the decision? What's the decision? I mean, trade or not to trade? To be or not to be? To trade queens or not to trade queens? Now, there are two ways of winning, hypothetically speaking, a position in which you're up a lot of material. And by the way, just to operationalize this, thank you for the 100 bits. When I say up material, for the purpose of talking beginner chess, I usually mean, let's say, a piece up or more. So like a bishop or a knight or more. When we're talking like up a pawn, none of this applies. Like a pawn advantage is too small to really make a lesson out of it right now. I will talk about being a pawn up, but maybe when we're playing slightly more advanced players. We can take the queen, or we cannot take the queen. Now, one of the ways of winning a game or up material, and that's what everybody learns, is to trade pieces and then win the resulting position because your opponent has nothing but a king left. How are you going to win this? What's going to be White's plan? The easiest plan of winning this position. Get rid of the ladies. Cut him off. Don't let the king. This is called cutting him off. And boom, 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 boom. We make a new queen. And we win. If we didn't have the b-pawn, I will talk later about how to win such positions. But the other way of winning a position where you're up material is to use that material to mount an attack against the king. Just by definition. So let me give you guys an analogy. Let's say you had a soccer game, and in a soccer field there's 11 players, right? Let's say somebody came up to you with an option. You could remove 10 players from each side. 10 players from each side. And you would be left with one player, Lionel Messi, and Lionel Messi would literally play the opposing team, which had no players. Obviously, you would take that option, right? Lionel Messi would just run up to the empty goal, and he would score. But the second option would be to leave, let's say, all 11 players against 10 players. And obviously, like, who would ever do that? But there are situations in which the 11 players are so good that leaving them on the board is actually going to result in a faster win. We can compare that to a situation in which Lionel Messi, in order to score that goal, has to fly to the stadium from elsewhere, and that's going to take him a very long time, whereas an attack can win the game immediately. I know that's a weird analogy. If we were to keep queens on the board, look what you could do. Check. And if the queen blocks, what do we do? Actually, this move also applies after king h8. What is White's best move? Checkmate. If the king moves away, we go rook a8, and this is a pin against the queen. Do you see how quickly and how much faster White wins the game here if he keeps the queens on the board? This is a simple example. If we have a lot of pieces on the board, sometimes it's worthwhile not to trade, but rather to go directly for an attack. And when you have more pieces than your opponent, the attack can just crash through immediately. So that is why I know the analogy goes far, but now you guys won't forget it. Hopefully you can see why it depends, okay? Because in certain cases, an attack decides the game a lot faster than trying to trade. The other thing to be cautious of is that when you're trying to trade a lot of pieces, it can be very easy to ignore. Tactical threats. You might be so fixated on trading pieces that you forget that there exist various threats, like a back rank mate, for example. And I can show you guys plenty of examples from my games and others' games where this happens. By and large, it depends. As I play my early games, I will try to let you guys in on my decision-making process in terms of whether or not to trade pieces. Here, I have an extra queen and his king is wide open, so it literally makes zero sense to trade too many pieces. So take rook e8, bishop g4, just developing. Now, you might, well, Daniel, you just said don't trade, and now you're trading. This isn't really a big-time trade, right? I'm getting rid of his knight, the knight defends the pawn, and I'm forcing him to either ruin his pawn structure or bring his king closer in where it can be checked by the queen. Fatal Owl asks, if you're bad at calculating attacks, should you always trade them? No. Well, here's the thing. When you're a beginner, you don't want to develop any complexes or big weaknesses, right? So if you feel like you're bad at visualizing and attacking, I know that it's painful, but force yourself to sometimes go for the attack, because that is the only way that you get better at things you struggle with, is by not avoiding them and thrusting yourself into whatever field, whatever area you struggle in, okay? And what often happens, part of the reason beginners get stuck at a level where you feel like, why can't I improve? Is because you've spent so long avoiding a particular area of the game, let's say end games or openings, that by the time you finally get around to start learning it, your opponents who are rated 16, 1700 just have so much more experience than you at those areas. It's very, very hard to eradicate those long-term weaknesses in your game. So face your fears on the chessboard and off the chessboard. Okay, the rest of the game was very, very simple. We don't really have to look at it, but basically I just won the pawn using the pin, queen f6, and just last thing, guys. When this move is played, most beginners would automatically play rook b8. And here's the important thing. Remember, guys, that I said don't get waylaid by meaningless material when you're up a queen. Like, don't play 5 moves just to win a pawn. Well, the same thing goes the other way. He's attacking our pawn. Big whoop. That's just a pawn. We're up a queen. Okay, so we don't need to spend a bunch of time making our rook passive to defend this meaningless pawn. We can just go straight for the threat. I see this all the time. Players getting obsessed with defending every single little pawn when they're up so much material they could easily afford to give up the pawn and even more and just get down to business. Are there any questions about this game? Or can I move on? I'll play 1 or 2 more and then I'll pause for today. Are there any other questions about this game, about what I just talked about? And I want to take everybody's questions. Why not queen b2 check? On which move? I don't understand exactly where. Oh, okay. So queen b2 check would not have won the rook because after king f1, the king unpins itself, and now you can't take the rook because of bishop takes c1. But what can black do here in order to win some material? What can black do to orchestrate some material? Rook takes c3. This is called removing the defender. And it comes back to something I said in the first game. When there is only one piece defending a particular other piece and no pawns defending a particular other piece, this is what I call a type 2 undefended piece. I've developed some terminology to talk about this. I will talk about it later. I'm letting you guys in on some stuff that I've developed and usually share only with my students, but I think they'll be okay with this. When a piece is defended by only one other piece, it's basically still undefended because you can remove its only defender and then it's essentially undefended. That's what you can do here. And at the end of the day, you are hanging around. I'm not currently accepting any students, guys. I'm really, really slammed as it is, but I'll talk later about that as well. Okay, so that was the game. And final thing, not getting fixated on material. This is called an exchange, by the way. Rook for a bishop or a knight is called an exchange. I sacrifice an exchange. And I just checkmated him. This would be a great example of trading versus not trading. I can take and trade and win a piece, and win by just promoting the pawn. Also win by checkmating him on the spot, because I have so many pieces here in the attack.